addressing this topic today, the Ikoyi conversation from three angles. We're looking at our perspective. What do we think about Ikoyi? What do you think about Ikoyi? Why are we particularly interested in Ikoyi? What do our clients see uniquely about Ikoyi? We're looking at our projections. Where's the market currently? Where is the market going? Where are the opportunities? What are the opportunities? What are the gaps? What are the new possibilities that are left to be unlocked? And what are some of the threats? And so I just want to talk about that, those aspects for a second as far as the projections go. Some of you here may have your properties or have clients who have properties in Ikoyi. And sometimes one of the biggest areas of our advisory work is to help clients rethink their property portfolio, help them ask the questions so that they can actually optimize the property that they have. And so if you have, maybe it's land, it's an old property on the plot of land, or in some cases, some people have maybe two houses on there or a block of apartments, and the place has been rezoned, that particular location has been rezoned. It's important to know that certain roads command more value because of their zoning. So whether it's in the short, medium, or long term, the zoning is what actually affects the value. And so from our perspective of Fine and Country, one of the key things that I'd like to pull out, which is not necessarily highlighted actively in the presentation, is that going forward, if you want to think about investing, especially in a location like Ikoyi, it's important for you to think about future-proofing that investment by asking yourself, do I want to be able to extract the maximum value from this investment I'm making, whether it's in land or property, especially if we're not talking apartments now, we're talking you're buying land or you're buying a property on a plot of land. So the smart money, if you were buying even 500 square meters of land or property in Ikoyi, the question to ask is, on this road, will I be able to maximize it? Or am I restricted to a certain height? Am I restricted to a certain number? Obviously, it goes without saying that the roads that give you the most ability or opportunity to expand or stretch that plot of land will command more and higher value in the long term and also in the short term. Now, that said, obviously, if you're looking to build it for your own use, then those considerations please stay on the previous slide. Those considerations don't then matter as much. However, because we're dealing with astute clients, I thought it was important to make this point that just as we've talked about with regard to the apartments, you want to make sure that you always future-proof your investments by going with the ideal framework that we shared, the integrity, question that we asked in terms of the identity of the developer and some of those considerations that we've just run through. When it comes to investing in land, the question to ask, if you want to future-proof this investment, is to ask, where is it located? What is the location within this Ikoyi location? And is this a location that I can continue to extract the maximum value from? So if you take a road like Cameron, on Cameron Road, it's zoned for medium density. And so, especially when people collaborate, or you look at Cooper Road, people tend to go to roads where they can do a quick development, 10 stories, 12 stories, that sort of thing. But super developers go to places like your Glover Road, your Lugard, your Bodilon, Gerard Road, for example, because in that case, they're then looking to go into a joint venture. So if you own the property, you don't have to own the money to actually extract the value from it. And so let's move on. So on this page, we're saying, where's the market currently? The combined effect, has brought us to where we are. There's a demand for land. People are actually, there's a word called gazumping. In the last 6 to 8 months, it's been incredible. You almost have to start praying and fasting when you want to buy a plot of land in Ikoyi. One, you want to make sure you're buying one that has the right title, which my colleague will speak about shortly, because there are different types of titles in Ikoyi. But two, you also want to make sure that you're buying, the right property in the right location. So Ikoyi has remained largely immune and is still a choice place for independent builders, for owner-occupiers, for developers. And in the place of single-family housing, condominiums, and high-rise towers, we are seeing the development option, being the go-to choice. And we see that continuing to be the case. And so as a matter of fact, we have people in their, nice homes that they've had now seeing that they have developments happening right beside them. And it's very disconcerting. And so what they're then doing is moving from those single family housing or homes into now the condominiums, into these luxury apartments, and then converting their property into a development proposition, either by themselves if they have access to the financing or the funding that is required, or in partnership with other investors. And that's something that Fine & Country in 2021 expects to see a lot more, and we're going to be actively involved in setting up these investor and joint venture collaborations. Please move to the next slide. So where's the market going? Based on current development, the preference of developers, as we said several times, is for high-rise towers. Joint venture partnerships are in the increase. Investors are inclined more towards funding of projects as an investment hedge against inflation. What that basically means is that one of the reasons that a lot of the investors we're seeing is high net worth clients is that, instead of, for those of them who are diversifying, or who are cash rich in Naira. And obviously we know that there's been a massive challenge with sourcing, with the exchange rate policies, and with, dollars and all of that, with Forex, the devaluation of the Naira and all of that. And so one of the things that people are doing is obviously investing in blue chip locations that obviously one exceeds the rate of inflation, but in addition, actually have significant possibilities and, track record of basically really growing against even whether it's inflation or Forex adjustments. Can we move forward, please? So as far as opportunities and gaps, the scarcity in Ikoyi has created the need for apartments. We've said this over and over again. It's almost sounding like a broken record at this point. So you will see a lot of tall buildings, in Ikoyi in the future. But even within, those enclaves, there will be super high rises or super luxury ones, which will always stand the test of time. And some we project what will happen is that at some point, the owners will have the very arduous task of working together to perhaps bring down, especially the low rises where they've not optimized their location, and look to seeing how they can expand the properties, because it's been under optimized, as it were. So we're seeing some stable rental incomes. I think it's very important for us to put a caveat to that. Over the last few years, what has happened is that we've now seen a more realistic approach to rental incomes. And so as I said earlier, you have the Naira economy within Ikoyi, and you still have the dollar economy within Ikoyi. The dollar economy within Ikoyi is less than 10%. Matter of fact, we refer to it as the 1 percentile, and where you have the Naira economy, being the majority of the rental market. But Ikoyi remains one of the top choices, and in our assessment ranks up there above all other locations for CEOs of multinationals, for diplomatic officials. Ikoyi still remains, the location of choice. For some reason, as much as people, and we will have a focused session on Banana Island, because there are incredible opportunities also in Banana Island. But now that I mentioned Banana Island, I also want to mention that for those who are buying land, there is a consideration that there's an opportunity in Ikoyi versus Banana Island as far as land that is often missed. And I'll just take a minute to explain that very quickly. Most of the plots in Banana Island, as you can imagine, are low residential density plots. And so those plots, you can only build one house on, say, 1,000 square meters, or two if you stretch it, if you were to keep within the zoning laws, which is something that we at Fine and Country obviously advocate and advise our clients to do. Because if you don't do that, there'll be a day where, the Pharaoh that doesn't know Joseph will come, and that approval that you got out of turn would become a real albatross that you have to deal with. So the important question is to ask yourself, as an investor, am I thinking about the future potential of this investment? Yes, now I want to live in it, for just my family. But if I were to think 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years down the line, buying a property where I can only build one or two versus building on a piece of land where in future, my future generations can actually convert this to maybe a tall building, into an office or into a mixed development or into a tall residential or into multiple, into a mini cluster, which investment would you make? And so that's where Ikoyi actually presents an opportunity as undervalued versus a Banana Island where you're paying your 700 million per square meter, 700,000 per square meter versus Ikoyi that's an average of 400 to 450, inching to 550 per square meter, where Ikoyi will give you multiple options, whereas Banana Island gives you a very restricted option. So right here, what we have is a real estate pricing in Ikoyi. This isn't cast in stone. What we've done is take averages, and they're what we refer to as outliers. So there are some properties, very few, that you will find lower, and there's some that you'll find significantly above. And so if you find that you're significantly above this, then you've got to be asking yourself the question, does it have the E factor? Does it have the extraordinary factor? Does it have the wow factor for you to be paying that extra, as it were? So 3-bedroom apartments we like to refer to them as apartments. And, interestingly, the other day we just did a search. What's the difference between apartments and flats? It's really about jurisdictions, and there's an article that says that, there's a bit of a snob factor to call it apartments. Americans call them condos, some call them apartments, the British call them flats. It really doesn't matter. We found, though, that calling them apartments tends to position them and in a different session. When we deal with real estate marketing of luxury property, you will come to understand that there's a language for preserving the value of luxury real estate, and we've got to be deliberate about it. Whether you're an owner, you're an investor, you need to understand the language, because the language can play for you or against you. So the 4-bedroom apartments range from 180 million to about 350 million, give or take. The terrace duplexes range from about 190, just under 200, to about 350 million. The 4-bedroom semi-detached duplexes, same sort of range, 200 to about 400 million. And then the 5 bedrooms detached duplexes range from 300 to about 500 million. What you will find in a location like Banana Island, where the land, most of the residential plots are low density, is that you will begin to see these very vertical terrace houses and townhouses. And they're really, some of them very luxurious. And so some of them are on 4 floors, and at the top you have your rooftop terraces, and you've got lifts in them, and they're just, really slim. Because they're going vertical, so they can get more units onto the plot. But there's only so many of those that they can put on any plot because of the restrictions. And so you'll find that those go outside of these because of the finishing, because of the cost of land and all of that. Bearing in mind that Banana Island at the moment is about 30 to 40%, about 25% to 35% above Ikoyi land, which we see as a massive opportunity for investing in Ikoyi. Land on the average is 400,000 naira per square meter. Interestingly, a year ago, we had an opportunity for a plot on Thompson Road, and it was under 300, it was about 231,000 naira per square meter. And so a client has bought that and has actually now put it back on the market. That same property is now on at 480,000 per square meter, almost double. So even with the devaluation of the naira, even with the forex, challenges, you can see that they've definitely hedged against inflation, and in addition, there's definitely been, value created from there. Of course, the real value is created when that land is actually developed, because it was quite a substantial plot. So you have investors in that category. So this is what the prices are looking at like for the average properties. As I said, there are the ultra luxury developments like the Belmontes of this world that are priced in dollars. But even if you were to take those developments and work the price per square meter, what you will find is that they're actually within value, and in some cases undervalued compared to some of the other dollarized projects that are on the market. But that conversation is one that we can have very specifically with qualified clients for those. So if we just want to go very quickly and take a quick look at some of the portfolios, some of the things that you will see. So we do have some prestigious, highly sought after. I'm a massive fan of some of the properties in the portfolio that we're showing you. This one that you see right here is referred to as the Glover Diamond. Really excited about this. Excellent value. It's just literally coming into the market. We've started to share it only today, yesterday and today, with a few clients. It's off plan, so it really gives people an opportunity, but we'll come back to that. Bought this 20-story, the Belmonte. I like to refer to it as the jewel, the jewel of the luxury apartments in Ikoyi, and actually I would like to say in West Africa, and even in Africa, because I lived in South Africa many years ago, dealt with real estate in Dubai, in South Africa, and in London. And this property absolutely stands heads and shoulders at the same level as some of the best and most famous properties in the world. We'll talk a little bit more about that with clients who may be interested in this sort of thing. It is a beautiful, beautiful piece of work. The residence, totally love, in Banana Island, on the Banana Island node. 15 apartments, there's only 4 of those available at the moment. They are actually the largest what we call the mansion apartments. The reason for that is that the average size of the apartments in the residence is about 500 square meters. The smallest is under 500, 460 something square meters. And so when you compare this, actually it should be valued amongst the dollarized luxury apartments, but it's one priced in Naira, 2 it's in Banana Island, the safety, the cluster node, as it were, and the apartments are really, really massive. 4 bedrooms are scarce, and certainly 4 bedrooms that are in the 500 square meters range, priced in Naira, are very, very scarce. And the finishing and the quality of the build is definitely top notch. So we do have a handful of clients at the moment looking at some of these apartments, and what they find very attractive about it. Some of them live in Banana Island, some of them live in Victoria Island. What they find attractive about this is that it is for their families. And they have, not really massive families, but they want that sense of space, especially now that people are working from home, and, finding that their homes have to give them that sense of, comfort, convenience, and, just maneuver room, as it were. Let's take a look at the second one. So this is priced starting from 395 million to 550 for the really large 550 square meters property. That's the residence. Let's take a look at the next one. The Grace Court is in Banana Island. It's a very unique development, and the promoter, the landlord, because it's actually not for sale, we're just really featuring projects that we find to be pleasant, and that make us proud to work in Ikoyi. And so the Grace Court has these units, 2 and 3 beds. As a matter of fact, in last week, we've actually just concluded 50% of this development in terms of negotiating the leases, and they're all to top corporates. We put this here to show that there is still a market for investors who are looking to buy to let. So this investor has done exactly what we've been referring to, where they bought on a road where they could maximize this plot, and they could have done much more, but because of their own profile and mindset and approach, they preferred to do fewer units, finish it to very high specifications, and position it for top corporates. And that's exactly what we've gotten here as tenants, all corporate tenants, and they're all CEOs of multinational organizations. Let's move on. The Glover Diamond is an off-plan development comprising of luxury apartments and penthouses. This is the one I was just referring to. Listen, if you are an owner-occupier, I remember a few years ago we had a development that came into the market in Ikoyi. Actually, we've had two such projects, and there were people who lived in Lekki. There were people who thought they couldn't afford to be in Ikoyi. But especially in the last few years, there's a sense in which, as people have progressed, as people have, their lifestyles have changed, they're looking to migrate from across that famous bridge that I talked about into this place where there's a sense of safety. It's lower density, the lifestyle, the green, the leisure, all of that is there for them. And of course, the community itself. And so there's a sense in which they feel they cannot afford this location. But that's what I love about the Glover Diamond, because it presents that very unique opportunity for people who are looking to live in Ikoyi, who already at a certain level, they're living in great homes, whether it's in Victoria Garden City, it's in Lekki, it's in the Nikon towns of the world, and all these other estates, whether in Ikeja or across Lagos. If you want to get into Ikoyi and live here, this presents an incredible opportunity because, first of all, it's off-plan. It checks those boxes that we talked about in terms of the identity, the integrity of the developer. They've done a lot of projects in Banana Island specifically and other locations that have been very successful. Some of those houses that I mentioned, the vertical ones that are in the 600, 700 range in Banana Island, have been done by this developer, and they've all been taken up. Well finished, well built. And so this particular development is coming in at under 300 million, starting actually from 250 million. And if you've read my book, the real estate book, I share a lot about the possibilities and the profit to be made from coming in at an off-plan level. And for this one in particular, we're looking to work with unique set of investors, especially those who are two categories. One, looking to occupy it for their families as a leg into their own residence in Ikoyi. Bear in mind, it's on Glover Road, but it's the Glover Diamond. So that property gives you that opportunity. The size of it, the average 3-bedroom, because it's not enough to say price from this to that. The question is, what is the size? This apartment is 361 square meters. Now, some of the 4 bedrooms you find in Ikoyi, in Victoria Island and the environs are an average of about 250 square meters to under 300 square meters. Here you have 361 square meters. And at this stage, you have an opportunity to either go with a 3-bed with the study and the extra spaces, or you can have a 4-bed, and we have the 4-bed options that still gives you even a study. And the 3-bed gives you the study, gives you the two service quarters, and just the flexibility, especially when you come in at this stage. So we're taking deposits at this point. And so if anyone is interested in this, please, send a private message or, just get in touch with us directly, and we can share more details of floor plans and all of that and discuss it extensively with you. Let's move on. Empire Court is in Ikoyi. on Obauyekon, which is referred to as Second Avenue in Ikoyi, 3 and 4 bedroom. These are priced in US dollars. They range from about $1.2 million all the way up, to the penthouse. Most, quite a large number has been sold. It's still a fair number on the market. And so if you have that sort of budget and you're looking for a property in that sort of price point, you want to maybe take a look at the Empire Court. Let's move on. This particular project has been built by Capa Delberto. Next one. Mans Bay Luxury Apartments. This particular property is on Queens Drive. We know Queens Drive is where you have the Federal High Court. It's where you have, some of the the British High Commission, Deputy High Commission's residence, and a few other residences, the American Guest House. So it's quite an interesting road. It's got the waterfront. This particular property is on the waterfront, only 8 apartments, all fully rented. There's maybe 1 or 2 on the market at the moment. But when we got involved with this property a few years ago, very interesting, great architecture, contemporary architecture, great finishing, and all the bells and whistles. Osbon Towers, one of our crown jewels by virtue of the international award that it won in terms of the market, the show apartment. It won an international interior deck design award, all fully sold exclusively by Fine & Country. We're very proud of this property. Interestingly, when we sold this property many years ago, it started from $1.5 million all the way up. And it was mainly sold to owner-occupiers. Most of the properties we've shown you today are properties which are mainly targeted by owner-occupiers, people who are looking for something unique where they and their families will have a certain lifestyle. The profile of the people who live here and in all the buildings that we've shown, mainly captains of industries, mainly private sector, people, hardworking families, some retiring, some transitioning, and all of that. The Glover Diamond that I just talked about is one that straddles both, in the sense that it has the opportunity for being, invested in as a buy-to-let. The unique thing about that Glover Diamond is that we believe very strongly that it's a very strong investment product. And the kind of people we're seeing buying are both those who are looking at it as owner-occupier and those who already have invested in Ikoyi and they know good value in terms of investment property when they see it. On Saturday, I will be, also sharing with female investors and, just working through how investors can collaborate to actually get a leg into a property in Ikoyi. So if you were to take the diamond, the Glover Diamond, for example, if 10 people were to invest 25 million over 2 years, each, then you own that property, jointly. So the mechanics of that we'll discuss. Just food for thought, different ways for getting onto the property ladder in Ikoyi, and at the moment, very flexible, great terms. Let's move on. We have Oakwood Residencies, fully sold, fully occupied. At the moment, this is on Cooper. Also, great value at the time it was sold, where you get in from the ground up at the off-plan stage, also very well priced. The challenge with some of these properties, with this one in particular, I have to admit, we did, have some challenges around, some of the things that we mentioned in terms of, the developer starting with a particular contractor and then subsequently not quite, finishing and running through. And so these are some of the lessons that we've converted into learnings to then ensure that certain things are, done. And now as a company, when we get involved in projects, we actually have a project manager as part of the team, an external independent project manager to just ensure that those types of risks don't happen. But, fortunately, because the value was so great, the investors, still have a great asset on an excellent road, and, it can only be on the up and up. Okay. Do we have any other? King's Place, let's move on. These are, the detached homes ranging from under 400 and above, about 8 of them. So just really various, just wanting to give you, I'm going to stop here. Do you want to just go quite quickly through the rest of the portfolio? Okay. Yes, go on. Just to give you a sense of what's in Ikoyi. Okay, so what I'd like to do at this point is just, I'm just going to read an excerpt from my book, just talking about prime location. Prime location. There's a quote that says, I've always liked real estate, farmland, pasture land, timberland, and city property. I've had an experience, with all of them. I guess I just naturally like the good earth, the foundation of all wealth. That's Jesse Jones. And so in my book, which has, various principles for investing profitably in real estate, P stands for prime location. And so I go on to say that prime location properties are like blue chip investments and generally make great returns in the long term. So prime locations are areas that have a solid reputation for attracting top tier clientele, companies, multinational, high net worth clients. Some of the factors that determine how prime a neighborhood is include safety, quality of infrastructure, organization, and density. And prime locations in developing countries will typically have foreign embassies, missions, top corporates, captains of industries, and of course, they tend to command a much higher value for sale and when it comes to renting. And so as much as people say, oh, but these locations are expensive, our role, especially in the new world that we're in, is identifying not just the ultra high net worth clients, but also helping the emerging entrepreneurial class, the middle class, to find creative ways of, as it were, getting into these locations as a way of helping them to create wealth. And that's a conversation that we'll be having subsequently. I'm going to stop at this point, and I want to do a chat, see if we have any questions, if we have any comments. Before I get my colleague to talk about title, we're not just going to jump in there without giving you room for questions. So we have a mini Q&A at this point. Has this been helpful? Let us know in the chat. Has this been helpful at all to you? Do you have any comments, any questions, any observations, or from your own experience? Another a gap that I didn't mention, because we're focused mainly on luxury residential, is that Ikoyi, being a low density location, still doesn't have quite the required level of commercial, of office buildings. And even though we do have tall office buildings coming up, and there's quite a lot at the last assessment, probably close to 70-something thousand square meters in terms of commercial, but there's a gap as far as the mid-size offices. So offices between your 100 square meters to about 300, 500 square meters. Then offices also priced below $500 per square meter. So anything that is in the range of 100,000 Naira to about 250,000 Naira. So that is a gap, but we're not focused on that, but I just thought to mention it so that when you're looking to invest in land in Ikoyi or property in Ikoyi, and you're asking the question, is this zone for residential? Is this zone for commercial? Or is it mixed development? You want to buy something where you have the options to potentially have some apartments, potentially have, especially the small apartments that you can use for short stays, the 2 beds, the 1 beds. There's a gap in that space also in Ikoyi, for people who don't want to be, and that's why we put the grace code, people who don't want to necessarily be in big towers or hotels, and they would rather be in smaller residential boutique type executive stay accommodation. So over the next 2 years or so, there are quite a few of those opportunities that we've seen some of our investors and some developers begin to tap into, but there's still a lot of room for those in the market. So your mid-size offices and your small unit efficient buy-to-let type apartments, those are significant gaps. You also have families whose children have lived all their lives in Ikoyi, and now they are worried about having their children go and live where ideally it's all they can afford if it was based on just the children's income. But because the parents also are thinking of their own convenience of crossing, in quotes, the bridge, they do not mind then investing in some smaller units within Ikoyi environs. And so these are some of the opportunities that we're showcasing and going to be tapping into in 2021 in Ikoyi and its environs. And so those are some of the gaps. Let's take a look at the questions. I see a question there. Great webinar. What would be the average return on investment on the buy-to-let apartment in Glover Diamond? Great question. Now, when we do an executive summary, we call it an executive summary for investors. We showcase what it is. So to give you an example, so I want to start off by saying that this particular apartment, we believe, has the potential to be denominated in dollars for two reasons. One, the location. Two, the quality of the build and the facilities. So if we were to match it against some of these dollar-denominated properties, then what would happen is that you will see that actually in terms of value, there's great value on it from an acquisition point of view. Now, from a rental point of view, we believe that that property can achieve $40,000 to $50,000, and we are being conservative. And I'll give you a case study very quickly. There's a property, and I believe that a few of the investors are actually here, that some of our clients bought, and very similar to the Glover Diamond, denominated in Naira, subsequently changed to dollars because of the quality. And so what then happened is that I was speaking to one of the, interestingly, 40 to 50% of our clients are women. One of the ladies who bought a 2-bedroom at the time, at the moment she's achieving 22%. And the reason for that is she bought a Naira denominated property and now is using it for an executive short stay. That's one. We have another client achieving actually over 25% because of the time they bought. They bought at the early off-plan stage. But the average, to answer your question, return on investment for Ikoyi properties, if you buy properly, which is the whole essence of what Fine & Country tries to do with investors, that you make money when you buy, not when you sell. And how do you do that? By making sure you buy with the right fundamentals. So if you buy with the right fundamentals, you should be achieving anywhere from 8 to 15%. So on this property, if you were to rent it out at an average of 18 million to 20 million, you'll be achieving anywhere from 8% and above, as it were. And if you were to price it in dollars, then you'd be doing significantly more. But we do have the specific details in the investment summary, which I'd be happy to share with you. And of course, if you were to do an executive type of rental, then you're doubling that actually. But please bear in mind that with the executive rentals, you also have added management. But even when you net that off, you will end up with an average of 15% return on investment. Thank you.